the Miami Dolphins at number 3, um, benefiting from the god awful Houston Texans and the mess that they've become with their 4-12 season. So this is Houston's pick that they traded to Miami in the Laramie Tunsil trade that Mark alluded to earlier. Mark, you're on the clock. You're the GM because you've, sweet talked your way into this somehow. Who would you like? Or no, I'll phrase it a different way. What would you like the Dolphins to do?
I think for me, it's. I mean, there's the three options are you take your wide receiver who you think is your wide receiver one. You take and give Tua some weapons. You take Saul and you actually protect Tua, which would be nice.
It's a novelty.
I know, especially given that he wants to hold on to the ball for the whole quarter before throwing. So, more protection would be good. Or you trade back. I would very much listen to those offers. It depends what that offer is. And I think the value of that pick at 3 depends what the Jets do. If the Jets don't take a QB, your value at 3 isn't that big because you've still got 2, maybe 3 QBs that people love. If you get a QB go at 1,
even bigger.
Yeah, but I think... Sorry, go on, Craig.
No, I was just going to say, there are so many teams who could potentially be trading up for quarterbacks this year. And if the Jets don't take a quarterback, that means that their guy, the guy that these teams have fallen in love with, is more likely to be on the board.
Yeah, but I think...
trade market for that number 3.
Yeah, but I think if the Jets, take, I think also what the Jets do is going to massively affect the Dolphins in terms of who they have left on that board. Because if the Jets do decide to stick at 2 and don't take a quarterback and take, Chase or Smith or Penei Sewell, if they take that too, the Dolphins may say, well, actually, we've already missed out on one guy we wanted. Let's stick. Or they may say, great, the number 2 QB is still on the board. We've got more worth. Or maybe a fact that people say, well, actually, those 3 are much of muchness. There's not a lot of need to trade up. So I think what the Jets do is going to massively affect the Dolphins. Me personally, I would take Penei Sewell. I think you can. Yes. I think the wide receiver class is deep. If you love one that much, you've got assets trade up from 18. But I would take Sewell at 3, move Robert Hunt inside to guard. Yes, you've got yet another rookie on the offensive line, having started 3 there last year, but he's good in the run game, good in the pass game. He's quick to get off that line if you need him upfield. If you want a bit of fun, go and watch some tape of him upfield, just knocking small guys over. He literally goes up there and just has the most fun, just literally just going, not today, not today, not today. So, he's a great talent for me. I think he's, so much above. I know some people have Slater up there alongside him. I think he's so much above Slater that if he's there at 3, I take him.
Delving into the offensive tackle class this year with Saul out of Oregon and Slater from Northwestern here.
I'm a big fan of Saul as well. His movement skills are ridiculous. And looking back at the way I had the tackles ranked last year, I didn't have Tristan Wirfs as high. Now, Tristan Wirfs went out and had an amazing rookie season, and his athleticism allowed him to learn on the job and become a better tackle. So Penei Sewell and Tristan Wirfs kind of both have that elite movement skills. That makes me think that Penei Sewell is going to be a really, really good tackle. The Miami pick, though, I mean, it's a difficult one. It's probably the hardest pick, really, in the whole of the top 10. Because obviously there is talk about Tua. I know you said there's only 3 options, but people are talking about Tua and whether or not he is the guy to, take the franchise forward. I think it's ridiculous because, he's had half a rookie season. It's not enough time to properly evaluate him. But then you look at people or teams like the Arizona Cardinals who've done it with Josh Rosen, realized that they could get someone better and went for Kyler Murray. And obviously that's worked out for them. So it's a difficult one. I don't really have an answer as such because it all depends on how they feel about Tua. If they think Tua's the guy, then yeah, you either trade down or you get him a weapon or you get him Penei Sewell. But it all depends on how they feel about Tua Tagovailoa.
I feel like on the Tua situation, I feel like if they didn't think Tua was the guy, they wouldn't have thrown him in last year. I think what you have to consider about Tua is that, everyone says, oh, we didn't have OTAs, he didn't have off season, he didn't have training camp. He only played 9 games. And then I saw someone say today, it was like, yeah, but so did Herbert, so did Burrow. But the difference is that they still had an off season where they could train. Tua was rehabbing until about the second week of the season. So Tua wasn't even prepping for the combine. Tua wasn't doing anything other than rehab through the whole of that off-season period that never happened. So he was even further behind everyone else. For me, the thoughts on Tua come back to, what I said earlier about the Eagles. If Tua isn't the guy, if Tua is that bad, you may not be picking 3, but you'll still have a decent pick next year if he's not going to be the one that drives you there. The issue Miami have is that they do have a very good defense that can bail them out. But I think you have to give Tua a whole year. You've got to see what he can do, especially when there was a comment that I saw today debating about whether we bring in Deshaun Watson. And they just went, yeah, because Watson throwing to Matt Collins is going to be any better. Like, Matt Collins is a great special teams player. He is not a wide receiver. Like, quick
question, Mark. Just as a Miami fan, why do you think that there was no sort of downfield passing element of the offense last year? Do you think that Tua's arm wasn't strong enough, and or was it the weapons, or was it the play calling? As someone who probably watched the team,
I think it's a mixture of everything. Tua had the most number of passes dropped last year. Jakeem Grant had 2 50-yard bombs that one he just dropped, the other one he decided to half catch and then throw into Tyrann Mathieu's hands for an interception. So I think Tua gets a lot of bad press when you look at his stats. Actually, I was reading a stat the other day that said that had Tua's drops not happened, he'd have had a higher yard per attempt than Fitzpatrick did. So
that's fair.
I think a lot of it has just become bad press. I think part of it is the hip, and I think part of it as well is just trust. He was rehabbing then training with the twos, and until you trust those people, it's hard to throw downfield to them, especially when one of them's Devontae Parker, who was 3rd worst in the league in getting separation, and your other deep weapon is your tight end Mike Gesicki, who was 5th worst in the league in getting separation. So when you come from Alabama, where you're used to having Ruggs and Judy and Smith and Waddle being wide open, it's an adjustment.
A little bit. I think the other thing that hasn't been spoken about enough as well, with regards to specifically the downfield stuff, is that if you're like, he's coming off a fractured hip, like he fractured his pelvis, and quarterbacks rely on their lower body to get the power in the wind up to throw the ball downfield. Like, I don't care if you're physically fit again. Mentally, it's going to take you time to kind of feel comfortable, kind of properly winding up and like torquing your body to get that power. I'm fully behind the surround Tua with weapons. Give him, a fair crack at the whip and actually see what he does in year 2.
Yeah, and I think, get him a running back. Get him a running back who can scare defenses.
Okay, so we've spent a good amount of time discussing some quarterback situations and whatever else here. Contrary to some people's belief, there are other positions in the NFL that, have some players with a bit of talent coming into the league. This year, very similar to last year's draft in that there are a lot of high-profile wide receiver prospects. And again, 2 of them come from Alabama because that's what they do. Devontae Smith seems like a reasonable place to start. One of the Alabama duo, coming off the first wide receiver to win the Heisman for college MVP in 19 years. I think it was 2002. I think was the last one. For me, all you really need to do is go back and watch the playoff game against Notre Dame or the final, and you will learn everything you need to know about Devontae Smith.
Yeah, he led the team, I think, in receiving yards when they still had Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs, and obviously Jalen Waddle was there as well. So that kind of tells you that all you need to know. Like, you look at someone like Henry Ruggs, he came out, went in the first round, and his production was, about a third, I think, of what Devonta Smith's was. So he was the alpha in that room in terms of targets and getting open. So that kind of leads me to believe that he's going to be a great receiver. Obviously, his size is a little bit of an issue for some people. He weighs about 175 pounds, they reckon, but he's got a long rangey frame and he gets separation. So I think that's the most important part of being a receiver is getting separation. In terms of Jalen Waddle as well, Jalen Waddle jumped off the page the first time I saw him. Like, he is electric.
Yeah.
And like Henry Ruggs, I think I was watching Henry Ruggs tape at the time last year, and I saw the Jalen Waddle. Like, if Henry Ruggs ran 4.2, then Jalen Waddle's got to be close. And he's also got much better lateral agility. He can, he's got more of that Tyreek Hill make you miss, where Henry Ruggs was more straight line speed. So I think Jalen Waddle is electric. Like, he's probably the closest thing I've seen to someone like Tyreek Hill coming into the league. Because we've had John Ross, we've had Henry Ruggs, but I don't think they've had the same playmaking ability, like to go with the speed that Tyreek Hill has.
Waddle as well, the other guy from Alabama, is much more refined in his route running and things like that than he gets credit for a lot of the time, which wasn't so much the case with Ruggs. Ruggs was good coming out, but I think Waddle is a level above him in terms of overall wide receiver ability rather than just pure speed.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if Waddle was the first wide receiver off the board.
Henry Ruggs went before CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy last year, right?
Yep, first wide receiver taken.
Like, I'm not saying it's the right move, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happens.
Nope, there is an obsession with speed at the moment, and it's
I think
pretty
also,
justified.
He gives you something different, but he gives you special teams as well. You can stick him in at return, to return punts, return kickoffs. So I think that's very underrated. The amount that teams may see the benefit of that, having seen what the Chiefs can do, and it's those hidden yardage. If you can get those extra 10, 20, 30 yards on special teams, you're making it a lot easier for your offense immediately. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone like the Eagles, if they decide to go down the wide receiver route, took Waddle as that first wide receiver. Personally, I wouldn't, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Especially with them having watched the slightly more pedestrian Alshon Jeffrey trotting down the field for the past couple of years.
He reminds me of me at Flag Football League at this point. He's pretty damn slow.
Okay, so talking of juniors, talking of younger wide receivers who were the alpha in their room, LSU wide receiver Jamar Chase was on the same team as Justin Jefferson, the amazing rookie receiver.
All-time leader in rookie receiving yards.
Exactly.
With Kirk Cousins as his quarterback. Let's just add that into the mix as well.
Yeah, we should definitely mention that. Point being, there is a possibility that Jamar Chase is better than Justin Jefferson. Can you guys see that happening next year?
I can.
Yeah, I can. I think he's got so much better hands than Jefferson does. I think the way that I watched some tape of him the other day, and the way that he can just adjust to that ball in the air, and his hand work to contort with his body while securing the he's going to be scary good. Yep. Like, I think he's just got that ability to make the play out of nothing.
Yep. Okay, so Connor, let's do this a slightly different way.
Go on.
If you could knock him on anything, have you seen anything to knock him on?
I mean, maybe. Well, the first thing that comes into my mind for a good positive is contested catches, but that might be, due to the fact that he gets a little bit less separation than some of the other wide receivers. So I think that would probably be the thing I could knock him on, just that sort of speed to really get away from a cornerback. But I mean, he mosses people, man. Like, he is big, he's physical. I think he's fast enough. I think people are obsessed with wide receiver speed, but you look at Justin Jefferson, he wasn't the fastest he was probably around the same time as CD Lamb, wasn't as fast as Jerry Jeudy, wasn't as fast, obviously, as Henry Ruggs. And if you look at the top 10 wide receivers in terms of yards, they're all in the 4-5 kind of range. So I think, yeah, Jamar Chase for me, is the number one wide receiver that I've seen so far. And if you can, like I said, if you can be the alpha in the room with Justin Jefferson, I mean, who literally broke records this year. And I think he's going to weigh in about 210 pounds as well. Like he's a big guy. Like I really think he can be a difference maker. And I'd be ready to take him at 3 if I was someone like Miami, because I think he's that good.
If you're Miami at 3, I think the only reason you pass on Chase is because you want something entirely different to what you have. I think that's the only
quick retort to that though.
Pass on him.
Never, someone said, it might even be Daniel Jeremiah, never don't draft great players because you've got good players. I mean, I said the exact same thing about the Philadelphia Eagles last year. They took Jalen Reagor a spot ahead of Justin Jefferson. I thought that they had too many slot weapons. They had, Nelson Aguilar at the time. They had both the tight ends who operated mainly out of the slot in Ertz and Goddard. And I was like, don't get Justin Jefferson. He's too similar to what you've got. Now, would you rather have Justin Jefferson or the deep threat in Jalen Reagor now? I mean, sometimes I think you've just got to pick the best player because, chance is that Devontae Parker's going to be gone in a year or two, and chances are so is Preston Williams. Don't pick the best player. I think that's what drafting comes down to.
Anyway, let's give Connor something to talk about, because let's talk about tight ends.
Boy.
Cool. I'll let you lead this one, Connor.
Yeah, well, I've only watched a couple, but the first one, obviously, everyone's talking about is Kyle Pitts. I mean, he is just an absolute weapon. He is pretty much a huge wide receiver, really. He doesn't do a lot of blocking, but I don't think the blocking is really as bad as everyone talks about. He is a game changer. I think he's more like that sort of Travis Kelce kind of role. Caught like 15 touchdowns last year. At Florida with Kyle Trask, and I think he's going to go higher than probably any safety, any tight end except for TJ Hawkinson in the last few years. I think he's going to be a top 10 pick. I could see him, someone like the Bengals are even grabbing him.
That's true. Like he started getting a lot of traction with going to the Eagles at 6, kind of because Zach Ertz might not be on the roster next year or whatever as well. And yeah.
People talking about him to San Francisco as well. So like to have him and George Kittle and then the two run after the catch monsters, like that would be ridiculous.
On the grounds of competitive balance, I think that needs to be banned.
Yeah, and then the other guy I've watched is Pat Freiermuth? Is that how you pronounce it? Freiermuth out of Penn State. More of a traditional sort of inline blocker that is pretty good in the pass game as well. I know me and you were talking about him yesterday. I think the only thing that's going to let him down really is speed. He
complete absence of.
Yeah, I mean, anything, I think as a tight end, if you run anything under 4.7, then you're doing pretty good. But I think he could potentially maybe even run 4.8, something like that. But I like his tape. He can really block, made big plays in matches, seems to have good hands, good route runner as well. So I think he's pretty well balanced, but I don't think he's going to make it into the first round. We don't see a lot of tight ends really going the first round anyway. So, but Kyle Pitts, I think, is the only one.
Mark, what are your thoughts on Pitts and anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I've only really watched tape on Pitts. You just look at the success that Kelce and Waller have had this year.
Yeah, Waller is actually the best comparison for him. I agree.
And you say he's worth it. I think that's what makes him top end. Because he's just such a mismatch that if you've got your Kittle's the same. I think that if you can have that guy who is so big, yes, able to make those plays, then he's a weapon. It doesn't to me, it doesn't matter about his blocking. That's the only thing you can potentially say. Oh, he's not as strong as that, but bring in a blocking tight end in the 5th round if you really want the tight end to block. Like Kyle Pitts has hands. Yeah. He will make you plays. You don't need to block if he's across the middle of the field against against an undersized slot corner.
Get him isolated on a linebacker. It's game over. He's taking it to the house.
Yeah. Yep. He's just an absolute mismatch machine. If your team's drafting him, just know that he's not going to be pancaking guys in the running game very often. Another couple of guys to look out for: Brevin Jordan out of Miami. big fan of him. And Jeremy Rucker, actually, from Ohio State, had a really good game in the playoff.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you.
Mm.
Yeah, and Hunter Long, actually, from Boston College, is getting a bit of hype at the moment as well, after some Senior Bowl standouts. Cool. Last position, and one of my favorite to talk about, actually. A couple of great prospects this year. The running backs, headlined by a guy who's been hyped up as a first-round running back for, well, I think ever since he joined Clemson, to be honest. Travis Etienne. What have you guys seen of him?
I mean, he's electric. He just finds holes, but at the same time, he's very, there's sometimes it's almost that cartoon thing of his legs will just keep going even when you think he's at a brick wall, and he will just get those extra bits. So he's not necessarily that small athletic type who's easy to stop once you've got hold of him. He's kind of a bit of a hybrid of both.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Travis Etienne develop into a Dalvin Cook style running back, in that he's got enough power to knock people over. He can make you miss with his elusiveness, and he's more than good enough in the receiving game. So
Najee Harris?
Yes. Slightly different style of back.
Yeah, very, very different. But also, I think there's a common misconception that all the small backs can catch and all the big ones can't. He's a big back, but he can catch the ball. He is one of the better receiving backs I've seen. And he's I don't know, what's he, 225 pounds? I think he's
230 on a
230
on a trusty spreadsheet.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I'm really impressed with him. I don't think he's got breakaway speed, but he kind of brings that Derrick Henry style power with you, and you don't have to take him off the field on third down, which for me, if I'm getting a running back anywhere near the first round, he's not coming off the field on third down. We're not drafting playoff Lenny in number 4 again. So he's just got a skill set that you rarely see. You'd rarely see a guy that big who can catch the ball and actually run routes as well. He can run routes like a good slot receiver.
Yeah.
I cannot remember any other running back I've watched in college who will actually go up and win contested catches against a cornerback or whatever.
It's rare.
Seen it,
especially a power back. What the hell?
Yeah, exactly. He's kind of like any power back. Derrick Henry's the obvious comparison, but I think going back a couple of years, so kind of early career, Marshawn Lynch would be a better comparison for him because he could actually catch some as well. But Harris is better in the passing game.
He doesn't have Derrick Henry speed, like breakaway speed either. I don't think.
No. Yeah. There are a few more guys that I want to talk about. Personally, I think this is actually a pretty deep running back class. 2 of them on the same team who could well be gone by the end of day 2. UNC's Javonte Williams and Michael Carter. Michael Carter gaining a lot of traction from the Senior Bowl. Looks great there. And actually reminded me of another NFL backup who then went on to have great success somewhere else in Michael Turner.
Michael Carter is slightly smaller, right? A bit more of a scat back type, from what I hear.
Yeah, he's 5'9", 195 on here.
Okay, yeah, and Javonte Williams is a bit more of a bruiser.
Yeah, I like what I've seen of Javonte Williams. I think he's he's a good back. He's definitely, there's no way that he sneaks into the first round. He's definitely a later on day 2 kind of guy, I think. But I like him. I think he's he's fairly small, isn't he, Javonte Williams?
He's 210, 205, 5'10".
Yeah, he's only 5'10". So, but he's got decent speed on him, which makes him hard to bring down. He's not going to run away from someone, but he's got quickness through a hole. I think he's got good vision as well, and he's got a bit of power to him. He's got a lot to work on. Don't get me wrong, but I like what I've seen of Williams. He's a good back.
The thing about Williams for me is his contact balance. He is incredible at staying on his feet when he has absolutely no right to. I've seen him run through the hole, get hit in 2 different directions by 2 linebackers and still just trot off down the field for an extra 10 yards afterwards. It's like, okay, not really sure what we're meant to do here.
Yeah, I just got a stat here. He led the nation in missed or broken tackles with 75 on just 157 rush attempts.
Yeah,
wow,
he really is good.
I know PFF they rank that as the most important stat for running backs as well. So
yeah,
well,
it's a PFF record for broken tackles per attempt. Basically, he averaged a breaking tackle on 48% of his runs.
They place a lot of emphasis on that.
Yeah, and actually reminds me a bit of a undrafted Jag who had a little bit of success last year in James
Just
Robinson.
a little.
Yeah, he's also great after contact. He'll just keep going, keeps the legs churning. Yeah, and I see some similarities with Javonte Williams there.